What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Passageway of the Ancients. An admittedly quite obscure and very indie little indie CRPG, which I think has some interesting ideas. Now, I'll be real with you just off the bat, as I'm sure you can see on screen. This game definitely isn't going to be for everybody, but as a channel that has been, I would say, pretty committed to covering CRPGs, I still wanted to talk about this one because it does do a few things that I thought were kind of neat, especially given its 4-man development team. Now, to kick things off, the general premise of this one is simply that we play as a character who has just recently lost their parents to some sort of mysterious circumstances, which has probably everything to do with the fact that you and everyone who's going to be in your party for this one are all in fact a secret race of dragonkin, a people that, while physically powerful, are nonetheless seemingly pretty sparse, and thus at threat from basically everybody else, which is why they hide their appearance most of the time. So ultimately, solving your parents' murder and figuring out those circumstances surrounding it are what this game is all about. So let's talk about some of the systems you're going to engage with if you happen to choose to play this one. Starting first with character creation, of course. So, while perhaps not the most visually impressive thing in the world, there is actually a fair bit to this. For starters, we can pick between elf, human, or dwarf, and that is in addition to our regular dragonkin form that everybody is going to get. And then there's a whole host of cosmetic options, including the ability to actually customize individual portions of this character's body, which I thought was especially surprising given the scope of this game. But then we have the important stuff, your attributes and your class. Now, attributes are pretty much what you'd expect in every video game here. You can re-roll these, as it seems to roll them every time you pick a class, with the classes also mostly being what you would expect, with maybe the exception of Sentinel, which appears to be more of a battle mage than anything else. So in some respects, I would say this character creation is what you would expect, and then other parts of it are surprisingly more in-depth than you might imagine. But from here, the game throws you into either a basic walkthrough of controls and the combat system, or the prologue where you start getting to grips with what happened to your parents in a quick little tutorial dungeon, more or less. Both of them, though, I would say largely do the same thing, which is introduce some of the game's systems. And one thing I want to mention right away are the small little puzzles. Every once in a while, when you are interacting with someone, you might have to utilize what they call a rune set to spell out a word via a clue of some sort. Now, these are not particularly complicated. It does just seem to form a major puzzle mechanic, and that is in addition to things like lockpicking and finding other solutions around things at any given time. Though another interesting thing this game does is actually its main progression system. So for starters, you will get other people joining your party at some point, and as you and your party go about completing objectives, taking out monsters, etc., you will eventually level up, and you'll be granted skill points and attribute points. Attribute points, of course, simply increase your attributes, whereas skill points have to be taken to a trainer via the guild hall in town. These people can train you in your various skill trees based on the class you picked at the beginning of the game. And that's how you're going to pick up and manage all the different things your character can do, on top of simply being more proficient with certain types of equipment, which there seems to be quite a bit of. And much of it seems to be restricted based on that individual character's class, of course. But from there, let's talk about what you're going to be using that equipment for, which is mostly combat. Now, honestly, if you've ever played an older isometric CRPG, you'll kind of get the gist here. It is real time, with you being able to, of course, take the actions associated with your class. Some are going to be able to cast spells, some are more dedicated to healing, whereas some are just straight up melee characters. The spell system seems to be taken from TTRPGs, where you only have so many you can cast per day and then have to rest, outside of things like cantrips, which allow you to do it more permanently. But what I really want to talk about here is all of the different combat options that are available to your character, starting with simply high, medium, or low, and this corresponds with where your character needs to aim on the enemy, just in terms of like their general size. So smaller enemies like, say, kobolds or goblins, etc., you need to aim low, whereas much larger characters, of course, need to be aimed at high. But then there's all your other options, form, style, etc. And as you customize these, you're going to be affecting things like your damage, your chance to hit, how fast your character is moving, their overall armor, etc. And it's an interesting mix of options to bring to a game like this to allow you to have individual control over how each character is performing, not just AI-wise, but also directly affecting things like their chance to hit. And you can either do this individually or for your entire party if you prefer. And that system in particular I thought was pretty neat in this otherwise relatively small in scope game. So putting all of that together, basically, I would be lying if I said that this game had much to offer beyond a nostalgia trip for gamers who especially love older isometric CRPGs, and as such, I think this game will always be obscure and niche, but you can definitely tell that it was made by people who certainly love that genre at the very least. To put it a little more simply, I would say if you love isometric CRPGs and you're nostalgic for the 90s, this might be for you, but otherwise, I think it's mostly just a look at some interesting systems that was clearly a passion project for these devs. And speaking for myself, don't expect a full review on this one. This came out while I was busy. It actually released just a few days ago on October 16th. And I am extremely busy at the moment. But I still wanted to take the time to show off a little bit about what this game is about after I mentioned it in my upcoming CRPGs video especially. So hopefully you've gotten something out of that, especially if you watch the video all the way to the end here. If so, definitely let me know what you think about this one down in the comment section below. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.